Energized electrical wires and gasoline does not mix. Anytime that you're working on an automobile and you have an open field line, go ahead and de-energize those electrical wires by removing this negative battery cable from the battery there. Just use an 8mm wrench to loosen up that nut and get you a flathead screwdriver. Pry that up off of that battery terminal. Twist it back and forth there and just move it over to the side so that it won't touch. Now we're going to remove this throttle body splash shield. Just 3 10mm bolts, one on the passenger side, 2 on the driver's side. And then just pull it off. Set it aside. Now we're going to remove this fresh air duct. Just loosen up the clamp that's attaching the duct to the throttle body. And just grasp this duct here with both hands and pull it back. It'll pop right off. Now you got a mass or idle air control little duct there coming into the side of it there, and also a little PVC elbow directly below that. Just pull both of those out. Try not to lose the clamp. Now right here is the intake air temperature sensor connector. Just press that tab there and pull it off. Move it aside. And then down here is the mass airflow sensor coming out of the air cleaner housing. You can just follow those wires down. It'll lead to a connector, and it's got a little push type grommet that's up in a bracket there, and then just grasp that whole connector, pull that grommet out. That'll make it a lot easier to separate that connector there. So it's got a little tab on it there. Just push it and separate it. Now pop this lever open there and remove the whole duct. Get it out of the way. On the bottom of the radiator to your left, go ahead and open the drain valve. Let that coolant start dripping out into a drain pan. And loosen the clamp on the upper radiator hose. And just break that clamp free. And you can grasp that hose and just slowly pull it off. You're going to get a little bit of spill here. Just twist that hose up off to the side there, get it out of the way. Alright, now I'm going to remove the cruise control servo cable there. Just pop that off. There's a little groove there, and then take the spring off. Don't lose that spring. There's 2 bolts holding the bracket in. Take those bolts out. Now you can just pop the accelerator cable off. It just slides out a little notch here on the side. And right back over here is a push type grommet that's in the power steering bracket there. Just grasp that and pull it out, and you can move that whole cable assembly off to the side and get it out of the way. Okay, this is the main vacuum hose there that's coming off the throttle body. Just pull that off. And we got this idle air control valve, fresh air duct here. Just get that out of the way. You use a screwdriver there to help pry that off. This is the vacuum operated solenoid. Just remove that electrical connector and these 2 vacuum hoses off the bottom. Those 2 vacuum hoses come off together. Your idle air control valve, electrical connector, and then your throttle position sensor. Move both of those. EGR valve, vacuum hose. And back here is your evap canister purge valve hose. It's on there pretty good. Screwdriver helps out a lot here. And your fuel pressure regulator. That vacuum hose comes off. This is your differential pressure feedback connector. This is your evap purge valve vacuum hose. Take it off. That's right above the brake booster. Alright, now we're going to take this brake booster vacuum hose and bracket assembly off. Just loosen this jam nut up on this EGR valve. Take that nut off. And you can just pull that brake booster hose off there, move that whole bracket assembly and hose, get it out of the way. And just put that nut back on there to keep from losing it. Right down here, this is the PCV hose. It's already been disconnected from the mass air duct, so just pull it out completely and get it out of there. I got some WD-40 here. I'm going to spray down the EGR tube fittings. There's an upper one right there. They can be pretty rusty, so this will help break that rust up a little bit. And then right down, just follow that tube down, and there'll be the other fitting. And I actually got to that from underneath the vehicle. And of course you see this is upside down looking at it, but just break that nut loose right there with a crescent wrench. And I use a pair of pliers there to help loosen that up some. And then get it the rest of the way with my fingers. On this bottom one right here, you just need to crack it open just a little bit, just enough to be able to twist that tube out of the way. As you can see there, it didn't take much. And there's your vacuum tube orifice hoses. Just pull those off, and you can see they're different sizes, so they'll go back on one way. Remove the dust cap there to the fuel rail there. Don't drop it like I did. Go ahead and put some safety glasses on for this next step here, and just push down on that with a pick or a small screwdriver to relieve that pressure off that fuel rail. Next, these are the spring lock couplings. Just use a common screwdriver there to prop those clamps off. There's a lanyard on there, so they're not going to fall down. They'll stay on the hose there. So get both of those clamps off. And this is a special tool right here that you use to remove those. You just push that tool in there and pull the hose on the back side, and it'll that fuel line will come off. You may have to struggle with it for a while. I did, but I eventually got them off. Alright, now we're going to use a pair of pliers here to squeeze that clamp together and remove this heater hose. And this hadn't been off in a while, so a screwdriver will help quite a bit on getting this hose off. I don't think it's ever been off. Next is the heated throttle body inlet hose there. Just do the same thing. Use a pair of pliers, move that clamp off. Screwdriver help pry it off. Pull up on it as you pry with that screwdriver. Now reach down there. This is a PCV valve hose. Just pull that off. Alright, now we're going to remove the throttle body. There is 2 bolts on the passenger side, and this is not very comfortable getting back in there to these. Here I'm swapping over to a nut driver to help take these off a lot easier. And over here on the driver's side there, this one's one all the way in the back there. And then the last one there, it's kind of hard to see that it's up higher on the throttle body adapter. I'll just move this whole throttle body and adapter off to the side there, and of course I've got a clamp, a regular hose clamp on there. I had to remove this years ago, so I just put a regular hose clamp on there. It makes it a lot easier. So whichever one you have, if you've got the original one, you'll have to use pliers to get this off. And this hose is on there pretty good. And I started out with a pair of pliers there and using a screwdriver to work that up. And after you get that fairly loose there, just reach back in there with your hand and just pull it off the rest of the way. Now you can pull that whole throttle body adapter and the throttle body and the hoses and everything off. And you can get that out of the way. Alright, now I'm going to remove the power steering fluid reservoir bracket. There's just 3 bolts. Get that out of the way. Now I'm going to disconnect the fuel injector connectors, 4 on each side. Just little tabs on the side there, you just squeeze them together and it'll come right off. Now I'm doing the other side here. Okay, now I'm doing the coil plug connectors. There's just a little tab on the bottom. Right there, you just squeeze that from the bottom there and they'll come right off. And I'm just going to film one of these coil-on plugs being removed here, just a 8mm socket. Just take that off and take that bolt out there and it'll come right out. Just pull that coil right out. Now you can see I've laid these out in the order that I pulled them out from the vehicle. And you can see about these gray colors right here that I've replaced all of these except for these last 2. These 2 are the original. Anyway, I did that so I can put them back in and the way that they were before, and know that these 2 back here are going to go back in the same spot because I've got lifetime warranties on all of these. These 2 back here, I'll have to purchase new ones for those when they go bad. Okay, using a 1/2 inch drive breaker bar, or a ratchet, whatever you have available. Just insert that into that drive belt tension or pulley there. And just relieve the tension on that belt and pull it off with the alternator. Now we're going to remove this alternator, starting with the top bracket there, just 3 bolts. And just pull that little bracket out. On the bottom of the alternator there, I had to swap over to a 1/2-inch drive there to break these bolts loose. They were in there pretty tight, so just 2 of those bolts there. And the alternator's free. Just pick that up, move it over to the side, and get it out of the way. There's a zip tie there that is connected to the fuel rail. Just cut that. Now right down here on the bottom of the intake on the front side there is the manifold air tune valve connector. It's quite dirty there, so I just wipe it off and then just removing this connector off of there. Next is the water outlet, 2 bolts. Just take note that these are pretty long bolts. They're actually part of the manifold installation. Get those 2 bolts out of there, then you can just pull that outlet off. Alright, now it's time to remove the other 9 manifold bolts. These are in there pretty good. I have a couple of different extensions there to help me get to those easier. And there's no pattern for removing them, so you can remove them at your convenience. And right here I'm removing this EGR system bracket there, just 2 bolts. Just taking those out, it'll make it easier to access some of the manifold bolts down there. have 9 bolts. Plus the 2 water outlet bolts. Get all them out. Intake manifolds ready to be pulled off. Alright, just climb into the engine compartment there, and then just lift up on that manifold. It'll come off pretty easily there, and just work it back. You've got the lower intake manifold is attached, plus there's a noise shield that's wrapped around the lower intake manifold. It'll all come out together. And I climbed outside of the truck now, and it's out far enough I can just grab it and move it the rest of the way. Now if you look right down here, I lost a 7mm socket underneath that manifold a couple of years ago, and there it is amongst all the rest of the crud that's down there, and the coolant leak, as you can see. And parts of the noise shield that crumbled down inside of everything. And here I've got all the parts in the bed of the truck. There makes a good place to store them out of the way. Anyway, this is the end of part 1. Stay tuned for part 2, where I'm going to do all the prep work.